and start. In the next 12 seconds, the program will create 50,000 random data entries, build 51 readable spreadsheets, and edit 400,000 individual cells. And we're done.
Hey everyone, it's Collin, and today I'm making a video throwback to my first ever real Python project. It was a demo program for a local property tax solutions company. The company works with huge corporations, and naturally their business involves handling massive quantities of data. The purpose of my program was to demonstrate the power and efficiency that custom programming and automation could bring to their management of that data, especially data entry and cleaning on a large scale.
So I started off by browsing datasets available online for something interesting on which to base this project, and the one I selected was a dataset released by the city of Chicago about their TIF districts.
What is a TIF district? Cities use tax increment financing subsidies, or TIF districts, to revitalize blighted areas wherein property values are too low to attract the investment that would restore the community. Developers can't undertake projects in these areas because the costs are too high relative to the property value they create. Municipal governments use TIF money to bridge this gap, the increment, and attract private investment. This allows for redevelopment money to flow into the TIF district and revitalize it. So how might TIF district data be helpful to a property tax firm? The companies that recently completed real estate projects in a TIF district have likely just been hit with new property taxes, which makes them a great target for sales. Furthermore, TIF districts that received large sums with tax increases on the horizon are a great place to look for clients. So what's on the dataset I chose?
What we have is a list of vendors who received a TIF subsidy payment in this amount for this type of service completed in this year and in this TIF district. So a lot of good conclusions can be drawn from that, and it's a fairly sized data set. It goes to, I believe, 1,329 entries.
Using this data, I wrote a program that accomplished the following. First, to demonstrate data entry and cleaning, the program filters the data to eliminate all unneeded information. It then reformats the important data and presents it nicely before saving the dataset as a new file. Next, to demonstrate the automation of large-scale data management, the program creates 50 new datasets with randomized data based on the cleaned original. Each of these 50 datasets represents a random US city. Next, it analyzes each dataset to identify the top TIF districts and sales targets. It then saves each dataset in a new spreadsheet file, and finally it creates a master spreadsheet that reports on the national status of TIF districts. Before checking out the code, I'll show the program in action. On the left, you'll be able to see the new spreadsheets added to the empty folder.
And there we go. And done. We have the summary report at the top, all the way to Wichita at the bottom. Okay, so let's look inside these spreadsheets. Let's start with Boston. And there we go, TIF district report for Boston. We have some fictitious TIF districts, some made-up company names, and some randomized sums. Over here we have the key information that we're looking for, the sum of all the TIF payments, the top 5 recipients of TIF money, and the top 5 TIF districts. Let's open another file to make sure we're getting good results across the board. I go with LA. There we go. We have LA. We have new information across the board, different sums, different top vendors. Good. Finally, let's take a look inside of the summary report and see what we have. Okay, here's the TIF and 50 Cities summary report. This time the program gave us over $10 billion in TIF money spent across the 50 cities, and also gives us the top recipients, the top districts, and the top cities across the country. Useful information that might help direct sales efforts.
It's satisfying for me to look back on this code. It reminds me of how far I've come as a programmer. To speak plainly, it's vulgar, it's messy, it's needlessly complicated, and cluttered with tests and comments. It's amateur code that you'd expect from a newbie. But it was my first real coding challenge, and I made it work. Those roughly 800 lines of code took me between 80 and 100 hours of painstaking attention to write. Suffice it to say, redoing this project would look nothing like the first time. It would likely take an hour or two, the size of the code would be a fraction of what it was, and it would probably work better. Nevertheless, I'll give a brief overview of what's here.
The program basically consists of two functions that are defined and run. One of them cleans the data for the Chicago spreadsheet, and the other function takes that data, uses it as a template, and automatically generates all of that random data and reporting. We have our import statements defined inside the function. We open up the spreadsheet, we come down. Basically what ensues is a tremendous exercise in formatting the data of every column and every row. At this time I didn't know what pandas was, there was no OpenPyXL. I used a few commands from CSV to help out, but apart from that, I hammered out this code bit by bit. Because I didn't use any outside modules, it turned out to be great practice for type conversion and manipulating lists, strings, and other data structures. So doing it the hard way definitely had its perks. What we'll see next is summing up the important TIF districts, figuring out what rows and columns to delete, picking the top vendors, putting them in lists, messing around with them until they looked like I wanted them to. And finally we come to the next function. All the import statements happen again. Whatever. I made use of the random module to introduce the random data, change it up from spreadsheet to spreadsheet. Huge commented out code. I think what I did is run a huge block of code that randomized all of these combinations of possible company names, came up with this list, and then actually hard-coded the list in. Wow. I remember writing these for loops and if statements. The idea of any nested block of code was so difficult for me to wrap my head around at the time. What you're looking at right now was probably written in at least 100 different ways before I finally got it to work. But I learned it. Right here it looks like the randomized data is being finalized for each data set. And then based on all of that data, the top spenders, the top receivers of TIF money are calculated. And then we finally get to the point where all of that's reported and the spreadsheets that show up at the end. It worked. Okay guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing my first ever Python project, and if you want to see more exciting projects and some helpful tutorials from a now altogether different programmer, please hit that subscribe button for Project Python, and I will see you next time.